All right, hi everybody. Today I'm going to talk about night eating syndrome and how it started for me personally. So I want to start by describing what is night eating syndrome. So if you followed last week, I showed some of the main signs you may have this, but generally night eating syndrome, it means you are getting up in the night and having most of your calories through the night versus in the day. It's also often an intense urge to need to eat versus being hungry. It's a combination for most people of a physical and a mental hunger. So the general description of night eating syndrome, a bit different than sleep eating where you're not conscious. Night eating, often you are slightly conscious, but you're getting up and you have that need to eat in the night to go back to sleep. So today I'm going to share my own personal story, how that started. And then over this week, I'm going to talk about the whole journey of it. And then Friday going into how I finally found some freedom from it, which I thought that day would never come. So the humble beginnings of my night eating syndrome. So this is a pretty personal story, but I know a lot of people can relate to it. I did share it on my YouTube video, and I've gotten more comments and emails from that video than anything I've ever created of people saying, I feel like you're telling my story. And for that reason, I feel like it's a super important story to share. I often don't talk about my eating disorder or my recovery anymore because I do feel like it's very far behind me. But my night eating syndrome was a result of that and a part of that. That being said, everyone with night eating syndrome has a different story. Many people, it stems from an eating disorder, but for some people it's trauma. For some people it stemmed from addiction. From some people, they were like maybe just athletes or very busy and not fueling their bodies adequately in the day. So everyone's story for night eating syndrome in my experience is different. I've talked to many people and worked with many people. And the kind of connections I keep seeing are some form of calorie restriction, and then often some form of an addictive personality or something that may have led to that behavior as a way of comforting and nourishing in the night, which for many people feels so shameful because it's so secretive. It's in the night, nobody knows. So there's so much shame around it. And shame is a very dangerous emotion because shame says, I am bad. There's something wrong with me. And that is not true. If you are struggling with this, I want you to know, first and foremost, there's nothing wrong with you. This started for a reason. Often that reason was to keep you safe and protect you. Your body either needed nourishment or you needed some form of comfort that you weren't getting elsewhere. So there's nothing wrong with you. You're not alone. And I'm going to share my story just in case it might help you. So my night eating syndrome stemmed from an eating disorder, as I mentioned. And the root of that, I mean, often people don't understand eating disorders stem from a deeper issue. It's not about trying to be thin. It has nothing to do with the body. For me personally, for as long as I can remember, I've been highly sensitive. Even as a little kid, I would cry if other people were crying. So very sensitive to the energy around me. And that's something I've learned to understand the roots of. That's personal. I'm not going to get into that, but always been highly sensitive. And then going into high school, having all these hormones and life changing and my friends changing, I started to experience intense depression and anxiety. So I had a lot of suicidal thoughts. I was very depressed. I wrote a lot of angry poetry. I journaled out all my feelings, but it was something I dealt with very heavily and very isolated. I didn't talk to anybody about it other than through my poetry. And being 16 years old, my friends didn't really understand that. A lot of them, when I was in one of my more quiet, depressed moods, be like, oh my God, you're in one of those moods again. People didn't understand my depression, so that made me feel especially alone in it. And I remember even writing in my journal, I was like, I don't know why I don't have some form of addiction or eating disorder, because like the emotions I'm feeling are so heavy and I don't know how to manage them. And I need an outlet to let them go. Oh, you want to read my poems? I'll send you some. So I was I was constantly looking for these outlets, and the only one I had was writing, but it was so physical and so tangible, my anxiety and depression. And I had a lot of guilt over it too, because I was like, I was so aware that I was very privileged. I grew up in a decent household in a great neighborhood, and I was like, you don't have the right to these feelings. You should be so happy and so blessed. Like, why are you not allowing that? So I was kind of stuck in my own inner turmoil. And then at 16 years old, I decided that I needed to do something different to get out of the country. So I started researching schools abroad, and I was like, I want to go to school in London. I want to go somewhere and just experience life as sort of a way of getting out of my depression and out of high school. But all those options were really expensive to go to different schools. So I decided in the end to go to Ireland, where I have family. So I went just with my mom. The rest of my family stayed in Canada, and we moved to Ireland. So in Ireland, hi everybody, I felt I kind of had this freedom to, let me try and explain this. So I wasn't around my family and friends, and I had a freedom, and freedom's probably the wrong word, but I was able to develop my eating disorder fully because I didn't have as many people who had eyes on me. And it was very much an expression of feeling alone, which is one of my stories. We all have personal stories we carry with us. My big one of letting go has been that I'm alone. So that was a way of me voicing that, and in a way was a cry for help. Like, I specifically remember going to the nurse's office because I was so lightheaded from not eating, and I wanted to pass out so that someone would know something was wrong, because my exterior never showed, and I didn't have the words to express that I wasn't okay. And again, I didn't feel like I had the right to express that. So the eating disorder formed, I would say, as a voice for that. But as all you know, that comes with many complications. So what ended up happening was I lost my period. I lost a lot of hair. You guys, this is the most hair I've ever had because I'm so much healthier now. Hormone imbalances. I was even more isolated. I felt even more alone and misunderstood, because then people weren't asking if I was okay. They were just commenting on my body. When I moved back to Vancouver, Canada, where I'm from, that's all I received was comments that you look malnourished, you look too thin, are you on drugs? But it wasn't anybody asking if I was okay. So that's how my eating disorder stemmed, and that morphed into night eating syndrome. So that actually happened during my year in Ireland. So during my year in Ireland was when my night eating and my eating disorder developed. So at first, for most of that year, I was heavily restricting during the day, and I had a pattern where I would get up and allow myself a big breakfast. So I was like, in the morning, you can have a big bowl of cereal, you can have this, and then you're going to restrict during the day. I do not recommend this to anybody. And that over time morphed into me waking up at 2 a.m., 3 a.m., 4 a.m., and eating things I wouldn't normally eat in the day. So bowls of cereal, cookies. I stayed with my aunt and uncle there, and I would get up in the night and, raid their cookie drawer, things that I would never eat in the day because I was such a clean eater. My excuse was being healthy, but I was heavily restricting. And this developed this pattern. So when I moved back to Vancouver, even though I had decided at that point that I wanted to overcome my eating disorder on my own, which again, I don't recommend, but again, I did not have the words to properly express myself and what I was going through. So I was working to eat more in the day, but I would get up every night, like 2, 3, 4 a.m. and eat massive bowls of cereal, anything to calm this like intense physical, mental hunger. And I can now see that this was my body trying to survive. Often we get mad at our addictions and the habits that we take on. But in that moment, at that time, I didn't have the tools. So my eating disorder, like, I'm not mad at it. I don't recommend it. It caused so many issues for years to come. But at that time, it was a way for me to survive. And the night eating was my body and my brain saying, I need to feel safe. So it developed this habit. which I carried with me in various degrees, like up until a year ago. So that's about 15 years of my life of waking up, eating during the night, waking up, feeling sick, feeling ashamed, and then repeating this cycle over and over. So the degrees of it did change over the years as I, again, took on my own recovery, which I don't recommend, but I did become a total health nerd over this time because that was my way of finding answers to help in some form my depression, my anxiety, and my eating disorder. This is why I'm so passionate about the work I do, and I share it. And I don't ever pretend to be a doctor, a naturopath, a psychologist, any of those things, but this is something that I've heavily researched and worked on personally most of my life. And I've discovered over time, and especially in the last year, it was like putting together the final pieces to get to a place where I was fully physically, mentally nourished. And now I don't get up in the night. I sleep through the night deeply. I wake up every day feeling good and alive, and it's a freedom I never thought I would have. So that is the root of it. I don't want to go into too much more today because I want to talk on Wednesday about all the different things that I tried. And then on Friday, I'm going to talk about what eventually was the kicker for me and how I was able to get rid of this for good. So if anybody has any questions, I'll hang out here for a couple of minutes. I know a lot of people are going to join and watch this later because we're all in different time zones, especially my followers who are struggling with night eating. But if anyone who's here right now, please pop in the questions and I'd love to help. And this could also apply if anyone has any questions regarding eating disorders or nutrition, depression, anxiety. I would be happy to answer, or any personal questions. Hope you guys are all having an awesome day. All right, guys, I'm going to peace out. Thank you all for joining. Join me Wednesday, 11 a.m. I'm going to talk about the various methods and things that I tried and dig a little deeper. Even if you're not struggling from night eating syndrome, this is probably something you'll benefit from if you struggle from anxiety, depression, issues with the nutrition, or sleep. This should benefit all of you. So thank you so much, and we'll see you Wednesday.